The only thing worse than the Vikings in Minnesota is the scamming. And since they're both on the same trajectory of catastrophic failure with insane commitment to the causes of the problems as solutions, they'll probably just merge. As the Babylon Bee drew up this week, hey, here's a fresh rebrand. Just become the Minnesota Somali Pirates. It's probably more ethnically authentic in that state than the Scandinavian theme at this point anyway. And I've long expected the Viking logo to turn black sometime soon. I just thought the Minnesota George Floyds would hit first, but maybe old George has finally been usurped, and they are the preferred racial injustice now. Anyway, one thing a life of Vikings fandom has taught me, it can always get worse. Oh, J.J. McCarthy sucks? Well, just put in Max Brosmer. After all, it can't get any worse. Oh, look, there it goes. It actually got worse somehow. Likewise, the Somali scamming can always get worse. It'd be bad enough if the $1 billion+ was stolen sneakily behind the back of a government that was just asleep about it. But of course, it's much worse than that. The government was in on it, or at least one particular government official almost certainly was. And actually, I feel pretty dumb for not just assuming that immediately, given the brotherly tactics used to enter the country and numerous other dishonesties. But everybody knew that Congresswoman Ilhan Omar was at least tangentially connected to these scams. Of course, she is a member of that particular ethnic group known for its tribal loyalties. And in the biggest scam uncovered so far, the Feeding Our Future free lunch fraud, 60 of the 79 indicted live in her fairly geographically small district. So there were obvious dots to connect, but I guess I just assumed that the degrees of separation were something more like the game about Kevin Bacon and less like she's actually best friends with the people who did this. Some great reporting in the New York Post this week clarifies those connections. This by Chadwick Moore with an assist from Bill Glann, a fellow at a Minnesota-based think tank. Headline, what did Ilhan Omar know about the $1 billion welfare fraud case in her Minnesota district? And that headline is very kind because it includes the possibility that she knew little or nothing. But I think a very fair alternative headline could read, Ilhan Omar knew everything about the scamming and very possibly even designed it. Now, I've talked about the scamming many times, most recently in the context of the scammers sending the fraud money to Al-Shabaab, the Somali terror group. That was just a few weeks ago. I'll link that video in the description if you want more details on all the many forms of Somalis stealing taxpayer money lately. But that biggest scam, the Feeding Our Future free lunch scam, the one where some $250 million plus in COVID relief money was stolen under the premise of feeding hungry kids, but the kids were just made up. A huge player in that scam is a man called Salim Ahmed Saeed. He co-owned and operated a Minneapolis restaurant called Safari. In August, Saeed was convicted of stealing over $12 million by serving almost 4 million supposed meals to nobody. Safari was a small restaurant reporting $600,000 in annual revenue before the scam, but suddenly it became magically equipped to prepare and serve 5,000 meals a day, 7 days a week, and collect millions for doing it. And wow, there was Ilhan Omar not just visiting the Safari restaurant to see it in action, but promoting it as a success story.
Safari in ay tahay meelaha city oo diyaarinayo cunto maalin kasto.
Why does that video even look like it was produced in Somalia? Well, because it basically was. That is a riveting production of Som TV, the dedicated Somali network in Minnesota. Okay, but come on, just being there and saying nice things doesn't really mean anything. Maybe she was tricked, like the rest of these government buffoons. She showed up for some planned event and things looked the way they were supposed to, and she just helped out for the day and then she went home. Well, that's the thing. Ilhan Omar had a very cozy relationship with Salim Saeed and his Safari restaurant. The guy was like a brother to her. In fact, the Safari restaurant was the site for Ilhan Omar's 2018 election night victory party when she was first elected to Congress. That is a venue selected for a special event for a reason. But we all have friends with secrets, right? Friends who surprise us with their bad behavior. We've all been there at some point. Well, we haven't all been there, actually. The plot thickens. Just this week, Ilhan Omar appeared on CNN with Jake Tapper, and he asked her how this Minnesota fraud situation got so bad. Her explanation was short, but telling.
Can you shed any light on why the fraud got so out of control in Minnesota?
I think what happened is that, when you have these kind of new programs that are designed to help people, you're oftentimes relying on third parties to be able to facilitate. And I just think that a lot of the COVID programs that were set up, they were set up so quickly that a lot of the guardrails did not get created.
Now, set aside the many important questions like, if this was an accidental opportunity for fraudsters everywhere, why is the fraud so particularly popular in Minnesota? And why are so many in your district specifically in need of these guardrails? And why didn't you in Congress create these guardrails instead of just ramming through nonsense hastily and calling anyone with questions a lunatic science denier? Until now, I thought that question, why didn't you create the guardrails, applied just the same to Ilhan Omar as any other member of Congress, but it doesn't. It applies uniquely to her because what's important about that exchange on CNN is what she doesn't tell you. Oh, how regrettable it is that we didn't have guardrails, says the woman who wrote the bill without the guardrails. See, I thought this free lunch program was part of the CARES Act or one of the other giant COVID spending nonsense bills, but it wasn't. It was its own standalone, or at least it started as a standalone, and then it got packaged into the giant bills of spending nonsense later. But it was the Meals Act, maintaining essential access to lunches for students, designed to ensure that kids could still get food if their school was closed for the Rona. And the free lunch bill that was scammed to record levels by one particular ethnic group in one particular congressional district was written by, yes, the representative for that district, Ilhan Omar. And the bill didn't just lack guardrails. It was designed to remove guardrails. It allowed for the federal funding of lunches for school kids off-site. It doesn't have to be at the school. See the Safari restaurant. And hey, if that means the lunches are more expensive than they would be at the school, well, that's just fine too. Get rid of those guardrails, said the woman now telling us the lesson is, man, we sure do need some more guardrails. So, to recap, this lady wrote the bill that freed up hundreds of millions of dollars with little oversight. Much of it went to her friend, who she promoted, and at whose restaurant she held her campaign victory party, and we're supposed to believe that she knew nothing about any of that. Upon Feeding Our Future getting busted up by the FBI in early 2022, Ilhan Omar wrote a letter to the USDA. Hey, help me understand how this fraud was allowed to happen. How did the program I designed get used for the massive benefit of my friends so easily? And the story's not even over. If the guardrails really are so important, and Ilhan Omar really did want to know how this fraud happened, why were her staff denying the fraud immediately prior? The Minnesota Department of Education had been alerted to the many red flags of the Feeding Our Future program. When they started investigating, Ilhan Omar's deputy district director, Ali Isi, defended the organization, condemned the state agency for asking too many questions, and even implied that the scrutiny was racist.
Our brother Ali Isa from the Ilhan Omar's office.
I'm tired of this MD thing. How many MDs we have to fight against? Come on, stop this. Enough is enough. This community is tired. It's tired with the bullshit, it's tired with run around, and we're not going to tolerate anymore.
And that's not even all the friends either. Ilhan Omar is also friends with another guy named Saeed, Guhad Hashi Saeed, who also ran a fake meal scam and got convicted. His was called Advanced Youth Athletic Development, and he also fed ghosts. But in a very odd coincidence, he claimed to feed the ghosts at the exact same rate. 5,000 meals a day, just like Ilhan Omar's other Saeed friend Salim over at Safari Restaurant. Wow. Ilhan's friend group sure has a lot of coincidental fraudsters in it who coincidentally create their frauds on the exact same terms to collect on the bill that she wrote. There simply is no viable interpretation otherwise. Ilhan Omar was in on the scamming. She at least had knowledge, if not intent, and she very possibly cashed in herself, too. How exactly did she create a $30 million net worth in 6 or 7 years from nothing. Has she also made 5,000 ghost sandwiches a day since entering Congress in 2019? It is a big accusation, but given the connections and the record, the necessary questions eliminate the possibility of innocence or uninvolvement. If she's appalled to learn of the repulsive fraud, as she wrote in her letter right after the FBI raided the Feeding Our Future organization, why was her senior staffer criticizing investigative efforts to find repulsive fraud just half a year earlier? If Ilhan wants investigative oversight from the USDA, why did she write a bill to reduce USDA oversight? If guardrails are needed, why were Minnesota state whistleblowers not only criticized by Ilhan Omar's staff, but punished by the governor, according to nearly 500 staff from the State Department of Human Services? And since investigation is now so important, why does Ilhan Omar defer that investigation to the bureaucracy instead of to herself, the author of the bill that sent out all that money? If it's all a well-intentioned mistake, you don't fight against accountability. If it's just a program designed to help kids, it doesn't just happen to primarily help the site of your campaign victory party. And you don't just happen to write a bill that just so happens to benefit all your buddies. 1 is an accident. 2 is a coincidence. 3 is a pattern. Anything more, and we are well beyond much more, is so compelling you'd have to be Tim Walz retarded not to see it.
I'd never seen this before, using the R word in front of people. This is shameful.
But as telling as Ilhan Omar's CNN commentary was, it's actually not even the most telling Minnesota fraud commentary on that network just this week. Keith Ellison, who formerly held Ilhan Omar's seat in Congress, now he's the state attorney general in charge of prosecuting these people, except he didn't. He was too busy meeting with the Feeding Our Future people, actually, and agreeing that the case against them was racist.
You're running small, tiny businesses out of business over nothing. Walz agrees with me that this piddly, stupid stuff, running small people out of business, is terrible. He knows that there's a lot of unfair, discriminatory stuff going on with East African businesses.
Anderson Cooper asked Keith Ellison, hey, given the massive scale of this scamming, would you do anything differently to handle it? And Keith Ellison said no.
Critics have said that state officials, including you and the governor, did not act fast enough or quickly enough to investigate charges of fraud against the Feeding Our Future and did little to flag their allegations to federal authorities. I know you said it was the federal government that didn't move fast enough. Is there something you wish you had done differently?
No, first of all, the Department of Education denied claims when questionable claims were made.
Okay, well, that means either this wasn't an accident, this was your intent, or it means you just don't care about hundreds of millions stolen from the taxpayer so long as your friends or your friends' friends benefit. To say no, I wouldn't do anything differently when this country is defrauded means he's in on it too, either actively or passively, just as a guy who would let it all happen again. So you can count on him to let it all happen again. So the question now is exactly what Ilhan Omar was calling for. Will we as a country apply those guardrails strongly and thoroughly and investigate and prosecute not just those who collected on the fraud, but those who created it? Because I want no mercy. In fact, I want the harshest punishment possible. Make Ilhan Omar and Keith Ellison and all the rest of them actually eat the food they said they were going to give to those kids. Look at Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Fry here going through the gauntlet himself on this bean pile. He can hardly stand it. He's doing white supremacist dog whistles, just hoping some red hat guy's going to break in to rescue him. Pure torture. Maybe that's why nobody ate those lunches, actually. Just too disgusting. I guess that might be the one possible innocent explanation I hadn't yet considered. Thanks as always for listening and for supporting this channel. Always appreciate that thoughtful discussion down below, and especially over on X. That is at ML Christiansen. You're always welcome to coming out and chatting my live streams as live on Wednesday and Sunday nights. Looking forward to it. Goodbye.